you get free money, take it. That's one thing. If you say I don't have the money, that's fair.
Well, to tell you the truth, compared to where I am right now,
you're lying. I mean, you were in China with Sinovant. You were working with the NIH, according to reports.
But you want facts, man. You don't want to buy somebody else's narrative that they fed you either.
In this video, we are going to be watching Vivek Ramaswamy go head to head with conservative political commentator and musician Anomaly. This was an amazing interview, and I recommend you guys go and watch the whole 40-minute interview on Anomaly's YouTube channel. I'm going to leave that in the bio and at the top of the comments. So first of all, let's watch Anomaly give some reasons for his skepticism, which gives a lot of context for the rest of the video.
And I want to say I really appreciate and respect you for coming on, because I talked to your team. I said that there's a lot of things that I don't believe, and they still allowed you to be here, and you came. So I really do appreciate and respect that.
Thank you, man. And my view is, you shouldn't run for president and hide. And my job is I'm going to tell the people who I am and what I stand for, and whether they believe it is, that's a free country, right? Everybody's free to arrive at their own opinions.
And I want to tell you why I'm doing this too, because it's nothing personal, nothing below the belt. After 2020, right, I watched the entire country, in my opinion, get bamboozled by our government and the pharmaceutical industry. We had 15 days to slow the spread. They extended it. They printed trillions of dollars, right? We pretty much threw out conservatism and libertarianism completely. And at this moment, it's hard for me to trust a pharmaceutical CEO to run the opposition party. Especially after Donald Trump hired Alex Azar for HHS, who was an Eli Lilly lobbyist executive. I wasn't thrilled with how our presidency turned out. So that's why, I'm kind of bringing you here to ask a few questions.
And can I just say something at the outset about that, which is that, honestly, part of the reason I'm here is that people like you were way ahead of where every GOP politician who's in this race for president included was when it came to, when we look back, how would we learn about doing things under the same circumstances again? It wasn't anybody, not Trump, not DeSantis, not me, not anybody in this field who would have done it the way that, I think certain people out there, you're one of them who got it right. Now, I've had my issues where I've been right on and ahead of the pack on, but you got to recognize people who were first, and I'm not going to claim to be something that I wasn't here. I think every presidential candidate looks back at that period, or at least should. I'm man enough to say it, but to say that, you know what, there's some things we got wrong. We better not get that wrong again next time around.
All right, so I won't go too much into this because we'll cover these issues throughout the video, but there's a bit of context for you. And if you guys didn't know, Anomaly called out Vivek by making a video, I think it was on Twitter, where he said that he wasn't buying what Vivek was selling and he thinks he's a bit of a fake. And he challenged him to come on his channel and debate the issues, and Vivek heeded the call, which I find extremely admirable. And some of the questions that he raised are some of the similar question marks that I have. And if you guys have watched my last video on Vivek, I actually aired some of those exact question marks, not the least of which being his previous affiliation with the Soros Foundation, which Anomaly is about to address.
With the Soros scholarship, so can you explain that? Because a lot of people are misconstruing it and they're saying it was George Soros, but it was actually Paul and Daisy Soros. It was his brother. They call him the invisible Soros in some news things. And you got a scholarship. Was it in 2011 to go to law school?
2010.
From
when I applied for it.
Paul and Daisy Soros. So what have you been telling people about that? Because obviously a lot of people are skeptical.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I'd say my advice to everybody is be skeptical of anybody who's telling you anything when they're running for office. Here's the facts. I was 24 or 25 years old in the fall of 2010 when I applied on a Fridays. When I heard about it, the deadline was Monday. There was classmates who said, oh, there's a scholarship. First time I heard about it, but $50,000, I'm not going to turn that down. In my early 20s, filled out a scholarship application over the weekend. The funder of it, the main funder, not George Soros, but Paul Soros. It's his brother, who made his money independently, who, by the way, now is long dead, who funds the scholarship. It's a generic scholarship. Hundreds of kids.
Him dead doesn't matter though. It would be saying like I took he's dead now. It's like
you asked me to let you finish. So I'm gonna ask for the same courtesy. If you asked me to explain it, the guy is long dead because I think the big question that comes up is who's the boogeyman pulling the strings, and so the answer is I think it's relevant to know this guy's long dead, made his money independently, has totally different background from George Soros as well, but nonetheless. I wasn't even paying attention to this. I couldn't have told you what George Soros's ties were, let alone George Soros. Why I wasn't paying attention to him. And a different guy named Paul Soros is funding the scholarship. At the age of 24, I would have had to be an idiot, a fool, to turn down a merit scholarship that you win to help pay for graduate school as hundreds of other kids win generically. And I'm honest about that. That's exactly what I did. Were there strings attached? No, there weren't. Now, the reason I also bring these other facts up, because I think it's just important for people, skeptical people, to stay skeptical, is that I have no tie to George Soros other than criticizing him. There are other candidates who has tied to George Soros. I mean, George Soros's investment partners have hosted fundraisers for other prominent Republican candidates in this race as recently as June. Ron DeSantis. George Soros has praised other candidates in this race. That's not me. Has praised other candidates he wants to see as the Republican nominee. That's not me. There's candidates in this race who have received multi-million-dollar, $100+ million loans from George Soros. That's not me. I'm not saying that to disqualify the other candidates, but I am saying that when people get a lot of information, yes, be skeptical, but be skeptical where it's coming from too. And for my part, yes, I'm honest about it. I took a 24-year-old scholarship in the year 2010 from a guy who's related to George Soros. You know, if that's going to stop somebody to say they shouldn't vote for me, that's their decision. But I think that anybody who would have turned that down should not be allowed anywhere near the White House doing trade deals on behalf of this country either.
You say you're being honest. I heard 2 interviews. I quoted you. You said, when I didn't have the money and back when I didn't have a lot of money to do it. Those are direct quotes from you. Fox Digital News did a report and they said that the year that you took the award from Soros, you made $2.2 million that year and over $1 million for 3 years total. So
can I address the facts?
Do you really need the money or are you just saying that?
Well, let me address a couple of facts right there. So how do people know that? One thing they should know is it's because I did something that no presidential candidate has ever done. And I was aware of what I've said and when I've released it. We published 20 years of tax returns. Nobody who's running for U.S. president has published 20 years of tax returns, certainly not somebody who's been successful in business. And the reason is I believe transparency is important. I would love for every other political candidate to do that. None of them do it because they want to hide. So I voluntarily, in the early weeks of this campaign, put that on the internet for everybody to see. Anybody who on your show who's visiting, media or anybody else can see it for themselves. Now, if you want to interpret that correctly, so let me just tell you, if you want to get to the facts, I mean, I don't think these facts matter at all, but if you care about them, I'll go into them. Fall of 2010, I applied. My first major payday at the hedge fund I was working for was the year-end bonus I got in 2010, and then my real big payday then came in 2011. So at the time I applied for that scholarship, yeah, I didn't have, and my parents know, me know, had not earned big-time money. So the fall of 2010 when I applied, absolutely. Now at the year-end 2010, December 31st, for people in the finance industry, that's when you know that was a biggest paycheck by an order of magnitude I've ever gotten. And then 2011, it just kept going up from there. But the other thing I'll say is, to anybody else who's young and receiving advice, even if you have $1 million in the bank account and somebody gives you a $50,000 scholarship, yeah, take it. Don't take it if there's strings attached and they say you can't say certain things, turn down that money. But yeah, if you have $1 million and somebody gives you 50 grand more and you earned it, go for it and take it too. Turns out though, that wasn't even the position I was in. It was the following year, and you want to match up the tax returns, do the facts right. The reason I've done it is so that everybody else has full transparency. And so I just think it's important that people understand that.
Well, just real quick before we move on, the Fox Digital News report says you made over $1 million 3 years prior, and then that year you made 2.2. So, I mean, if you say, if you get free money, take it, that's one thing. If you say I don't have the money, that's fair.
Well, to tell you the truth, compared to where I am right now, put yourself in it wasn't a need-based scholarship. It's a merit scholarship. But I'd say that, you know what? I am wealthy now. Okay. I was not wealthy by the standards that I used to judge that back then. And yes, $50,000 meant a heck of a lot to me when I was 24 years old. All right. You can look up my tax returns post-tax, the way you accumulated. Had I earned a few $100,000? Yes. Leading up to that, did it become millions later and hundreds of millions later? Yes, it did. At the age of 24, it wasn't. $50,000 meant a lot to me, and I was smart to take it, and I would advise any other young person to do the same thing.
Okay, so for me, that clears things up. He was a student who got offered a scholarship, and he took it, which is what you do when you're on the way up. And I completely agree with him that he was smart to take it, as long as it means that he's not beholden to somebody now, or he's not indebted to the Soros Foundation in any way. But I think it's important to just get to the meta point here, because the question that is being alluded to, which no one really wants to actually say outright, is Vivek Ramaswamy a plant? Is he somebody that's actually bought and paid for by the clique, by the WEF, by the Soros Foundation, by BlackRock? Has he been placed there and put in a position where he can use his charisma and his intelligence and his oratory skills to charm the population into liking him and believing that he is fighting for them, thus ultimately getting him into office and removing the threat of Donald Trump?
President Trump is a con man.
All whilst the puppet masters are able to pull the strings from the shadows, whilst the public believes that this guy is acting in their best interest. For me, I would say it's a pretty decisive no, and not only because I believe and actually trust Vivek, but also because George Soros is a huge proponent of funding Ukraine and beating Russia. And he's also a proponent of basically open borders and the climate change net zero cult. So the way I see it, everything that Vivek stands for actually flies in the face of what George Soros wants to do in his evil plan.
We will.
So, unless some strong evidence comes up to the contrary, then that explanation works for me. And I would have taken the scholarship too.
Speaking of BlackRock, Newsweek reported recently that while you've been openly vocal against ESG policies, that Roivant, your company's major institutional investors, include Morgan Stanley, Viking Global, and BlackRock, the very firms he criticizes, are among his largest stakeholders, owning over 500 million shares in your company.
It's hilarious, right? So you want to know?
It is, yeah.
And the thing that makes it hilarious is that people have to know how the system works, right? Don't be duped by anybody. You want to know why BlackRock's the top shareholder of every American company that's publicly listed? The company I founded is listed on the stock exchange. Well, you want to know the way it works is BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard automatically own your companies, whether or not you have a choice in the matter. You don't choose your shareholders as a public company. And you want to know what's even more broken about it? People should know this. Your own retirement accounts, your own investment accounts are being used without your knowledge to vote for toxic policies in corporate America's boardrooms. So I've written 2 books. My most recent one this year, Capitalist Punishment, lays this out. This is a problem. It's a big problem when you have 3 institutions that are automatically the top shareholders of every major public company in the US. If you take your company public, you don't have a choice in the matter. That's how the game works. And if you have a 401k account, you don't have a choice in the matter. Your money is going to be used to actually vote for those toxic agendas. But I'm the only person in corporate America or in capital markets who actually started an asset management firm to compete and take that down. And I also believe in succeeding. It crossed $1 billion in assets under management within a single year. That's twice as fast as it took for JP Morgan to get there. And so that's how I roll. And so I just think that it's important for people to understand this. These are great questions. I believe in providing alternatives in the market and winning. So calling me part of Big Pharma or part of BlackRock is like calling Rumble part of Big Tech. And I say this as also somebody who backed Rumble early on to challenge Big Tech back when it was a private company. So I believe in winning through the market, not through staying out. I believe in staying in, providing alternatives, and winning. But yes, that was my background, not politics, before I made my run.
So I can understand why he would bring that up and why on paper that would look pretty bad. But Vivek answered it with absolute ease, and it actually speaks to a much larger problem. Not only in the US, but the global financial system is actually starting to look more and more like a monopoly. BlackRock have around $11 trillion worth of assets under management, around half of the US GDP. And they're buying massive amounts of homes and basically are the largest shareholders in a lot of the biggest companies that you and I know. Not only that, but they're also implementing ESG scores. And this allows them to control and also potentially destroy companies that don't go along with their agenda. You cannot be a CEO of a big company like Vivek was and not have these guys getting their tentacles into your business. They have a ridiculous amount of power and control, and it's almost impossible to avoid them. So it's actually, when you think about it, no surprise that they were big shareholders of his. And to be honest, for Vivek, having been in that world, it would have been so much easier for him to stay there, for him to have drank the Kool-Aid, gotten some very high-paying board positions, and whatever else makes you money and gets you a ticket into the club. But he didn't. He went against the grain, and I can't do anything but respect him for that. The bigger problem here is that these financial monopolies are able to exist, and they're able to exert extreme power and influence over the market. And I think that if they had a little bit more time, Anomaly and Vivek probably would have come to a pretty mutual understanding about this. And now on to the last bit of the interview where Vivek answers an objection that has been really trending lately.
Yeah, so with Axovant, your company that was the largest IPO, I believe, in the biotech pharmaceutical world of all time. Yeah. It said your mother and your brother, who are physicians, were on the in the company. And I saw you on Mad Money. You kind of hyped it up. One of the things I noticed about you is you're a really good speaker, right? And I think that probably came in handy with Axovant because it was a 4-time failed drug that you bought, and you used a trial that I believe your mom was on. So I don't know if I would call it now.
Yeah, I can actually give you, these are all hard facts that are in the public domain for the last 8 years, but I can walk you through it.
Well, yeah. Also, did you buy a drug that failed 4 times, and did you hype it up to a bunch of investors, and did your stock get to $200 and break IPO records, and did it fall to 35 cents because what you were selling didn't match reality? That's my question.
A lot of that was inaccurate. Some of it's accurate, some of it's inaccurate.
Correct.
So people know, because again, people deserve facts, right? Make your own judgments, but have the facts. I founded a company called Roivant. The whole premise of the business model was to develop drugs that pharma had abandoned because pharma's badly broken. We developed a number of medicines. One of them early on was a drug for Alzheimer's disease. We put it into a subsidiary. It's what we did for all of the drugs. That subsidiary was Axovant. 99.7% of drugs ever tested for Alzheimer's disease have failed. Mine was one of them, one of thousands of drugs. It also failed. Now, when that company went public, I had and Roivant had an opportunity to sell shares in Axovant before the failure. We did not. That's actually remarkable. And that's actually where a lot of straight up falsehood in the last, you can look it up, public filings, everything else, not a dime. Could have made a lot of money. Didn't, because the long run business model is, if I'm going to put my skin in the game, we lose first. We don't sell before the failure that other people are left holding the bag. So the person who was hurt by that was me. But
can I just say real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, your net worth's almost $1 billion, which is great. It's a capital.
And you know how it got there. Let me just
real quick. I'm just saying you have a bunch of shell companies. So when that one fails, you act like it hurt you so bad.
It did hurt.
Launching that into the public allowed you to. I mean, you were in China with Sinovant. You were working with the NIH, according to reports.
But you want facts, man. You don't want to buy somebody else's narrative that they fed you either. So literally in the last weeks they said, "Oh, Vivek sold shares." That's just false. You can look it up. Exactly, not a dime. Now, how did I succeed? After that, we developed 5 medicines that are FDA approved today. One of them is a literally life-saving drug in kids. 100% of kids die with a genetic disease by the age of 3. I worked on a therapy where a majority of those kids now live lives of normal duration when they're treated. One is an approved drug for prostate cancer. One is for endometriosis, uterine fibroids, psoriasis. Those are helping people. That's how you make money through capitalism, and we shouldn't apologize for it. That's how I made my money. I could have made money off of selling those shares, did not. And so I just think that many people, you know what, who are closest to it might even go so far as to call it honorable. Okay, I don't want to call myself that, but people who are closest to it understand that that's what other people in that position may have done in the past, not me. And so I just think it's important that people have actually hard facts, because we live in a world where, you know, people can say anything on the internet, and I believe in a free internet. The answer to bad speech isn't censorship or less speech, it's more speech, which is why I'm showing up on platforms like yours to be able to bring more speech to the table.
What a great note to leave it on there, guys. The answer to bad speech is not censorship, it's more speech. And thank God we have a candidate who is actually embodying that. He is going on so many different platforms right now, and he's not shying away from the hard interviews. And where is Ron DeSantis? Where is Mike Pence? The only other guy who's willing to do this at the moment is Larry Elder. Trump's got his hands full with some other stuff, but who knows? Maybe he will end up doing this before the actual election. The last point I'll make is this. That interview that we just saw was a perfect representation of the new political and cultural landscape that is being formed. Vivek might actually win this election because his strategy is to just get on all of these different alternative and mainstream, for that matter, platforms and just speak to people, get on a level with people. And it is working. The other politicians really haven't caught on to this. I mean, RFK seems to be doing a pretty good job of it, but is also facing a lot of censorship. But I also would say that a lot of the other politicians are terrified to do this. Imagine Mike Pence going on Russell Brand, or speaking to a guy like Anomaly, or coming on Rattlesnake TV for that matter. It'd be very different to the softball mainstream interviews that he gets. He can't just say, oh, the children and oh, the flag. No. They will not put up with it. So we're in this time at the moment where a guy like Vivek is really trailblazing, and he is setting the path, whilst a lot of the other politicians are still up in their ivory tower, refusing to come down and speak to people at eye level. This is an amazing and revolutionary thing that is taking place, and I'm all for it. So with that, guys, if you didn't know, we are making exclusive content on locals for all of our members. This way I don't have to go and make cringeworthy ads. So if you guys feel like supporting the channel, those links are all going to be in the bio. I do hope to see you there. And if you guys want to watch another video, click right here. Until next time, I'm Jake. This is Rattlesnake TV, keeping you armed and dangerous.